In this video, we're going to talk about how to draw a skirt in Adobe Illustrator. It's important to understand a few basics about fabric and how it drapes before we can move on to actually drawing the skirt. It's a little difficult for some people to get this nice soft drape look in Illustrator because of the nature of the program, but I've got it broken down into some steps that will make it work. First, I want to just talk about the hem of the skirt. Notice how the fullness drapes. The fabric moves forward and back, not up and down. I like to think of it as if it's made up of a bunch of smiles and a bunch of frowns connecting them together, which forms a hemline that looks like this. What happens is the smiles form cone shapes like this, which is what indicates drapes. You want to be very careful to make sure that you keep it shallow and keep this sort of look to it, and avoid scallops, because scallops are not the way fabric drapes. Scallops are for shells. Let's get to it. Just like with everything else we've drawn so far, we need to place a template. So File, Place. This time you're going to open the skirt template. Make sure to check the template and not check link. Click Place. And our layers palette shows the template and layer 1, and we're ready to go. You'll notice in this template that I've already prepared a few skirt sweeps because it's much easier to draw the skirt when you have something to follow. If you don't like the placement of mine, though, you can easily add your own, and I'm going to show you how to do that. With the pen tool, you're going to draw a straight line wherever you want it. And if you click, hold the Shift key, and click at the other end, you'll get a lovely line. Now I'd like to show you a new tool that we haven't used yet. Underneath this tool right here, which is called the Scale tool, you are going to click and hold and grab the Reshape tool. The Reshape tool is kind of cool. It sort of is the equivalent of adding a point, arrowing it down, and converting it all in one. So we're going to click right on the center line and drag down to create a nice soft curve, which is going to be the sweep of the skirt. Remove the fill. Now we're going to copy this. So I need to go back to my selection tool, release, and reselect it because the whole thing wasn't selected. Copy, paste in front, and with the arrow key, move it down just 3 clicks. We want to keep it very shallow. I find it much easier to change the color to red or blue so it's not distracting against the rest of the template, and lock the layer so that it doesn't move. And that is how you're going to create your own template. Our template placed and our guides drawn, let's draw a skirt. You want to make sure that you restore your foreground and background color to Illustrator default if you changed it in order to draw your guidelines. You're going to want to make a new layer because we certainly do not want to unlock the guideline layer. As a matter of fact, I'll name this Guides right now. And let's make a new layer, and we could start drawing the skirt. So we'll grab our pen tool and start at the waist. I'm going to do a little bit of a lower waist, so I'll start here. The second click will be at the high hip. And the third click will be down at the hem of your skirt. And I'm going to use this short one here so I can zoom in easily. I'm going to go with my Convert Anchor Point tool and curve this line. But a shortcut to get to it, while you're using the pen tool, if you hold your Alt or Option key, the tool will automatically change to the Convert Anchor Point tool. And you can just click and drag without going all the way back to the toolbar. So that's kind of a nice, handy little tip. So now I'm going to switch to the Selection tool. Another shortcut, I can do that by holding the Control or the Command key, and it will let me access the tool I was previously using, which in this case is the Selection tool. I'll marquee select this, click once on Reflect, Alt or Option click on the center line, and make a vertical copy. Now I can select both pieces, right-click, join. And if you like, we can take the Direct Selection tool and select that top line, and play one more time with the Reshaping tool. Click and drag straight down just a little bit to curve the top of the skirt. It's a new toy, we might as well play with it. We're going to switch to the pen tool, change the fill to none, so we have a better chance to see what we're doing. I'm going to zoom in a bit closer, and now we're going to draw a zigzag line across the bottom of the skirt. It's important to make sure that you actually click on this existing anchor point so that you're continuing the line. Notice, if you look at the pen tool, it has a little asterisk icon. That means I'd be starting a new line. But when I hover over this point, it changes to a /. That indicates that I'm going to be continuing the line that I've already drawn, and that's what I want. So I'm going to click, and now this is what this double line is for. The The second click is down. Back up to the top line, down, up, up, and I'm going to do this all the way across. They don't need to be consistent because the drapes in the skirt wouldn't be balanced and completely proportional. So I'm going to go back and forth until I get to the end and make sure I see the circle next to the pen tool and close my path. Now I'm going to curve all of these with the Convert Anchor Point tool. And here's the key to this. You want to drag the handle out until it reaches the next anchor point. Whether it's the right anchor point or the left anchor point, doesn't matter. Whichever one it hits first, that's when you're going to stop dragging out the handle. So I'm going to start with all of the top anchor points that are pointing up. I'm going to click and drag, and here my right handle reaches an anchor point first, so I'll stop there. Click and drag. When my handle reaches the anchor point, I stop. Click and drag. Click and drag. This time the left one hit first. Click and drag. Click and drag. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom row. Click and drag, and if you drag in the wrong direction, just untwist. Click and drag here. And I'm going to work my way across like this. Now you'll notice when I drag out the bottom handles, I'm dragging them far enough so that this vertical here is almost a straight line. It's not on any kind of an angle. And that's important. That's what's going to really give you a more natural draped look. Now at this point, if you need to, you can make some changes. I'm going to grab the Direct Selection tool, and if you want, this is a good place to move things around. Maybe you want a softer bit over here, not quite so harsh, and then I can drag the handles in, making sure to always keep that squared off smile shape. We'll have a nice smooth curve here. Maybe there's a lot going on over here, so we'll just make that a little bit shallower. We'll pull this handle out farther, so this is a nice crisp smile. And basically this is the look that we're going for. It's going to give us a really nice drape along the hemline. I'm going to fill it with white, and very important now, I'm going to lock the layer. If I don't do that, it's going to move on me when I try to do the next step. Make a new layer, and now we can go ahead and add the fullness lines to this. We're going to grab our pen tool. Every place that you have one of these vertical lines, we're going to turn that smile into a cone shape. So I'm going to click up, and then while I'm still holding the mouse button, I'm going to drag up a little bit, reaching towards the waistband of the skirt. If I were to now go and click on the next one, look what happens. It connects the line, which is not what I want. So I'm going to Control or Command Z to undo that. What I want to do now to release the pen tool is click, Enter, or Return on my keyboard. Now, when I place the pen tool again, it didn't continue the line from the previous one. And I can go up and click, drag, hit Enter or Return, click, drag, hit Enter, making a very subtle cone shape. Here's the next one. Now, I don't have a very specific edge here, so I don't need to put a line there. But I'm going to put one on this side of the smile, click, drag, Enter. This is a frown. Here's another smile, so it needs to form a cone shape. Click, drag, Enter, click, drag, Enter. Another smile, click, drag, Enter, click, drag, Enter. So I'm creating these very subtle cone shapes, and that is what you're aiming for in order to get this nice soft drape look to your skirt. So here's the last one. And now it's a really good idea to go back to the selection tool, select all of them while it's an easy thing to do by marquee selecting, and I'm going to group them together. Right-click, group. This way, if I ever need to select them again, one click will get all of them, and I don't need to select them all individually. Now, at this point, it looks okay, but we can finesse it just a little bit further by using profiles. I'm going to open the stroke panel, go down to Profile on the bottom, and change the profile to this triangular one. I'm also going to change the line weight to 0.75, making it just a little bit thinner. And now when I release this, you can see I have a very nice draped skirt. I'll go back and unlock the main body of the skirt so I can work on it now. And here's where I can do some tweaking if necessary. I'm looking at it and it feels a little bit wide at the hips. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. And I can adjust that by deleting one side, taking the other side and nudging it in with my arrow key till I get the shape that I'd like. And now I can copy, paste in front, and reflect this new side into place. And just to make sure everything works, I'm going to select the skirt bodice and the side I just copied, right-click, join, right-click, join. And now I've got my skirt. If you want to add a waistband or a yoke to the top of the skirt, you're going to do it the same way that we did the collars on the shirt. With the direct selection tool, you're going to select the front of the waistband, copy, paste in front, use your arrow key on the keyboard to move it down, make sure to get rid of the fill, and now I can switch to the selection tool or black arrow, hold my Alt key and drag from the side to extend it, release the Alt key, and drag from the top to move it up just a little bit to make sure the line is consistent all the way across. Now I can select both pieces, open Pathfinder, up to the menu, Window, Pathfinder, select Pathfinder Divide, right-click, ungroup, and now I have a waistband. One last piece to the skirt, take the direct selection tool, select the upper part of the waistband, copy, paste in front, right-click, join to get the back of the waistband. With the direct selection tool, you can click that upper line. We can grab that shaping tool and go ahead and give it just a little bit of a curve. And as I mentioned earlier, we want to get rid of these little spiky things. So I'm going to select everything and make sure in my strokes that I have round caps and round joins. That way that stuff is all nice and pretty. And we can change this to gray. And that is how you draw a skirt with flair. Now that we have the basic skirt drawn, let's add a few more details. We're going to add stitching to the hem. Line. But I noticed there's a little double anchor point here that I'd like to fix before we move on. And it's very simple to do. With your direct selection tool, you're going to select those two anchor points. Now you can right-click, average, select both, and click OK. And it's going to average the two anchor points into one and problem solved. Let's zoom back out and add stitching to the hemline. To do this, we need to select all of the anchor points along the hemline without selecting either of these endpoints. Sometimes that's a little bit difficult to do with the direct selection tool. So let me show you another way to do it. We're going to use the lasso tool. But before we do that, it's really important that we lock all of these flare lines so that we don't select them accidentally. And since they're all nicely put together in one layer, I can lock that layer so they won't move. We'll grab the lasso tool, which is up here in the toolbar just below the direct selection tool. We'll lasso all of these points. And now I can copy them, Control or Command C, paste in front, Control or Command F, use my arrow key to nudge them up a little bit, get rid of the fill, and turn on dash line. We'll change the line weight to 0.25, dash line, and now we have stitches along the hemline. Much easier than drawing. I'm a big fan of doing this on the computer. Let me show you how to add gores to the skirt. With the pen tool, you'll draw a gore on one side of your skirt. And because we just used the dash line, that came out dash, so let's turn it off and reset this to 1 point. And now I can select this gore and reflect it to the other side. So we'll click once on Reflect, Alt or Option click on the center line, select Vertical, and copy. Now I'm going to select both gores and the main part of the skirt, Pathfinder Divide, right-click, Ungroup. Now the reason I divided with Pathfinder instead of just drawing lines is because sometimes you need to fill with fabric, and you might want the patterns to go in different directions. For instance, a stripe or possibly a plaid on the bias, you want to line things up, in which case you need to be able to fill things separately. But you'll also notice that we lost the stitches, and that's an easy fix. We just select the skirt, right-click, Arrange, Send to Back, just like when that happened to the shirt. One last thing we need to do here. This line looks a little bit odd crossing the gore line now, so I'm going to go back to my layers, turn that lock off so I can do a little editing, and I'm just going to take my direct select tool, grab this little flare line, and move it to this side of the gore so it has a more natural drape. Sometimes it needs to be moved, sometimes it might need to be just deleted. You'll have to sort of play it by ear based on how your skirt drapes. But that is how you finish out the front of the skirt. In the next video, I'll show you how to do the back view and add a zipper. View of the skirt, and while we're at it, I'm also going to show you how to put in a center back seam with a zipper. So I've got my skirt completed. I'm going to select the entire skirt and right-click, Group. Let's move it over by Alt-dragging, and now we can take this and turn it into the back. The first thing I want to do is unite everything back together because I'm going to get rid of the gores and give you a center back seam instead. So we'll double-click on the skirt to go into isolation mode. Now I'm going to select the entire back of the skirt. I've selected the 3 gore pieces, the waistband, and this part of the waistband. I'm not selecting any of the flare lines or the stitching. Now I can go up to Pathfinder, select Unite, and we've put it into one piece. The only possible problem, which isn't really a problem, is that there are a few artifacts here. Let me show you how to get rid of them. All you need to do is change the fill to none so that we don't accidentally move the skirt around. Switch to the direct selection tool and just select them and hit delete. That's all. Sometimes it happens, and it's good to know how to fix it when it does. You just want to make sure that you don't delete anything from the outline of the skirt. Now we have to restore our waistband. And to do that, we'll copy the top of the band in the back, copy, paste in front, move it down with the arrow key, and you want to move it so that the waistband is the same width as the front waistband of the skirt. Switch to the selection tool, hold the Alt key and drag to the right, let go of the Alt key, and drag up just a tiny bit to make sure the size is consistent. When you're happy with it, select both pieces, Pathfinder Divide, right-click, Ungroup, and let's restore the default settings because look what happened. If I release this, everything's going to disappear. See, missing skirt. It's not really missing. My path is here. It's just that if you look in the toolbar, you'll notice that there's no stroke and no fill here, which is not a problem. All we have to do is restore the defaults to bring it back. But now the stitches are gone, and again, how do we fix that? We right-click, Arrange, and Send to Back to bring the stitches back. Not a problem. Let's add a center back seam and a zipper. I'm going to take my pen tool and add a center back seam. I can hold the Shift key to give myself a straight line. I'm going to divide the waistband and the skirt. So I'll select both pieces, Pathfinder Divide, right-click, Ungroup, right-click, Arrange, Send to Back to make sure I don't lose any of my details. And there's my center back seam. All I need to do is add my zipper here, and I will do that. All I need to do is draw a rectangle with the rectangle tool, starting at the top of the waistband and ending where I want my zipper to end. Make sure the fill is set to none, and now all we have to do is turn it into my stitches. So I can just grab the eyedropper tool and copy the stitching from the hemline. Make sure that this icon is pressed so it's nice and consistent. We get a nice bottom. And you can add a zipper pull. All you need to indicate a zipper pull is a little triangle type piece. We're going to make some fancy ones for close-ups later in the symbols chapter. So there's the zipper pull. We'll just put it there. And that is how you do the back view of the skirt. We'll select everything and just make sure we have round caps and round joins. Double-click to exit isolation mode. And let's take a nice look at it. We'll turn off the template. And now we have your skirt, front and back. I suppose I can turn off my guideline layer as well. And that's how you do it. I'm going to show you how to draw a blazer. These are the parts of the blazer you need to know so that we can set up a proper template. We're going to start with the collar stand and fall like we did with the button-down shirt. But then we need to know where the break point is and the extension so we can set a few guidelines up on our template. So let's do that now. I've already opened a file and placed my template. Let's go ahead and set up a few guidelines here to make it easier to work on. What we need to note first is where the break point is going to be, and that's the spot where the blazer sort of folds open into the lapel. So we'll need to make a note of where that is. I'm going to have this blazer open just a little bit below the bust line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line just to mark off that spot. The next thing I want to do is decide how far the extension is going to be. And that means how far beyond the center line is the blazer going to overlap itself. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start at the high point shoulder, move down to my break point, cross the center line, deciding how wide I want my extension to be, click on the break point, and then hold the Shift key and click down towards the bottom of your template. This is the template for one half of your blazer. Let's go ahead and select it and reflect it. Now we'll select all of these pieces, change them to red so that they don't distract us, make sure there's no fill. We'll call this layer our guidelines and lock the layer so it won't move around on us. Now we can make a new layer and go ahead and start drawing the blazer. Have our guidelines in place. Let's go ahead and draw the lapels and the fall. The first thing we need to do is draw the collar stand, just like we did with the shirt. So grab your rectangle tool, hold down the Alt or Option key, click on the center line, and drag out a rectangle that's about as wide as the guidelines. Once it's centered, you can use the arrow key to lower it down just a little bit. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer to what I'm working on here. Now let's go ahead and shape this a little bit. We're going to do it using the Reshape tool over here. But first we need to select the Direct Selection tool. Click with the Direct Selection tool on the page to release the rectangle, and then click on the top edge of the rectangle. Now switch to the Reshape tool. Click and drag up just a little bit to give the rectangle a nice curve. If you hold your Control key or Command key on a Mac, your tool will turn back to the Direct Selection tool. Click once on the page to release, and then select the bottom of the rectangle. When you release the Control Command key, it'll turn back into the Reshape tool, and you can click and reshape the bottom edge. So now I have a nicely curved collar stand. I'm going to go ahead and copy it for later use. Now we can move on to the collar fall. With the pen tool, you're going to decide where you want the notch in your collar to hit. And I'm going to say my notch is going to hit somewhere about here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the fall a little bit lower, around here. So my first point is going to be clicking there. And this is a point that's going to vary from blazer to blazer depending on the size of the lapel and the fall and where your notch is placed. The second click is the upper outer corner of the collar stand. Notice how it's following the guidelines that we've drawn. My next click is going to be on the shoulder, so we'll click out here on the shoulder. Next click is going to be where the point of my fall is, so I'm going to click about here. And then the final click is to close the path. Now I can go back and change the shape a little bit if I want to. I'm going to go ahead and convert this and round it out a little bit. And with my direct selection tool, maybe drag it a little bit wider so it's a wider or rounder shape fall. Now I can take that fall and reflect it to the other side. So I'll select it, click on Reflect, Alt-click on the center line, select Vertical, Copy, and now I have a copy on the other side. Just like with the shirt collar, we're going to select both pieces, open up Pathfinder, so I deselected it, and Unite. And now we have a piece that looks like this. And I have a little odd artifact here. It happens every once in a while, so let's fix it. Let's see what we have. A couple of extra points. So I'm going to switch to my Delete Anchor Point tool, and I'm going to delete the one down here and the one on the end so that I don't mess with the curve. We'll zoom back out. And now, just like we did with the button-down shirt, we're going to take these two little corner points and we're going to tuck them up into the back of the collar stand to make the collar roll. I'm going to click on this anchor point here and tuck it up there. And I'm going to click on this one over here and tuck it up here. Only this time, because we curved the collar stand, there's an extra anchor point in the middle. So all you need to do is grab that one and tuck it up in the center, and you get a lovely little roll up here. Now we can paste in back that piece we copied earlier, the collar stand. So paste in back, Control B for back, and now the collar stand is back in place, and we can move on to the lower lapel. I'll zoom back out a little bit, and let's do the lapels. The lapels are not that difficult because we have our guidelines in place. We're going to go to the pen tool. We're going to start at the break point on the left and place your first anchor point there. The second anchor point is going to be, again, where you want your notch. So I want my lapel to overlap my fall a little bit, so I'm going to click here. Now, how wide do you want your lapel? Mine's going to come out to here, so I'll click there. I want a little curve on my lapel, so I'm going to click and drag the handle just a little bit to curve it, and then click back where I started to close. And there's my lapel. Looks a little bit big to me, so I'm going to take the direct selection tool, select this little section, and scooch it in just a tiny bit, get the shape the way I want it. Now I can reflect it, so it's selected. We'll reflect it to the other side. Now I've got my lapel, but there's a little extra piece sticking out, so we'll select the one on the right, grab the eraser tool, and just erase this little bottom piece. I realize it looks like I erased both of them, but it actually only erased the piece I have selected. Watch what happens when I release the eraser tool. It didn't damage this one at all. So now that we've got this done, we can move on to the rest of the blazer. Lapels completed, we can go ahead and draw the front of the blazer. Let's zoom out just a little bit. bit so we can see the whole blazer area and get started. We're going to draw this in two pieces. We're actually going to draw half the blazer and then reflect it for the other side. Of course, we'll be starting with the pen tool. The first place we want to click is the break point where there's no lapel point. So the one on the left. We're going to click to start. Then I'm going to click up at the shoulder. Any place underneath the column fall is fine. The fall is going to cover it, so it doesn't matter. The next click is going to be the shoulder. Since it's a blazer, it's going to be a little bit wider than the shirt, so we want to come out a little bit beyond the template. We don't need a very rounded armhole in this case, so we can skip the inside the armhole point and just click under the arm. Notice how I'm clicking a little bit wider than the body of the template. I want my jacket to be a little bit fitted, so my next click is going to be a little bit in near the waist. And my final click on this side is going to be the length of the jacket, and I want it to hit about here. Now, I need to close this shape, so I'm going to go across this first guideline to the second guideline, and I'm going to hold my Shift key while I do that and click to make a straight line. And now I'm going to click back where I started at the break point, and that is 1/2 of my blazer. We need to switch to the Convert Anchor Point tool and finesse this a little bit. We're going to go ahead and soften the curve at the waist by dragging straight down. And I also want to soften down here by dragging straight down a little bit as well. And I want a little curve in my jacket here. So I'm going to add an anchor point on the first one of my guidelines, and then take the Convert Anchor Point tool and drag a little bit of a curve. And that's kind of nasty looking, so let's fix it with the Direct Selection tool. To move this up a little bit, that's a much better shape. Sometimes you just need to go back and finesse things a little bit. They don't always hit perfectly the first time around. We'll select this anchor point and maybe nudge it out just a little bit too so the blazer isn't too fitted. And I can kick this point out a bit as well. That looks like a nice shape. I think I'm pretty happy with it. So let's add the sleeve. We're going to add the sleeve the same way as the shirt, except for one little thing. We don't have that anchor point in the center of the arm this time. Instead of selecting the anchor point, what we're going to select is the line segment between these two anchor points. One click should do it. We're going to copy it and paste in front. The next step for the sleeve would have been to right-click and then join, but we can't do that because we don't have a curve that would make a closed shape. So instead, we're going to grab the pen tool, and we're just going to continue drawing the sleeve ourselves. Starting at this shoulder corner point, continue the line we started down to the hemline of the sleeve, across the hemline of the sleeve, and back up to the bottom point under the armhole to make a closed path. And there's the sleeve. One more thing we're going to do on this jacket, we're going to make it an armhole princess. So I'm going to click in the sleeve, inside about near the apex. We'll click at the waist and then down at the hem. I'm going to lose the fill, take the Convert Anchor Point tool, click and drag to curve, click and drag to curve this point. So I have a nice smooth shape. And again, this is where I can go back with the Direct Selection tool if I want to modify the shape at all, soften any of the curves. This is my chance to do it before I do any dividing or move anything to the other side. I'm pretty happy with that shape now, so I'm going to select that princess line and this half of the jacket, go over to Pathfinder, divide, right-click, ungroup. And now we're actually pretty far along with the jacket. I can select this half of the jacket along with the sleeve and reflect it to the other side. So once on Reflect, Alt-click on the center, copy. And now I'm going to select the entire bottom part of the jacket and the sleeves. Basically, I'm selecting everything but the lapel. Right-click, Arrange, Send to Back. Now it's starting to look like a blazer. We have a couple more things we need to do. We'll need to add buttons, we'll need to fill this area behind the collar, and we'll need to fill this area down here. But we'll do that in the next video. Now that we have the lapel, we have our blazer roughed in, let's finish up some of the details. One of the things we're going to need is buttons. Let's go ahead, grab the ellipse tool, and draw a button that looks to be about a good proportion for this blazer. And we'll place it right here. Maybe make it a tiny bit smaller. And now we need to decide how many buttons we want on our blazer. I'm going to make a 3 button. So we'll take this button and I can Alt drag it to the next location. And then I can just duplicate it, Control or Command D to move it to the 3rd place. And it's a good idea to select all three whenever you have things like buttons and group them together so that if you need to move them again in the future, you can do it with one click instead of multiple clicks. In order to fill this area behind the collar, all we need to do is draw a rectangle. We're going to go ahead and start in this upper left corner, drag across, straight down, so that it's just a little bit bigger than that piece that looks like a slice of pizza. Right-click, arrange, and send to back. And there we have that area filled. So for the back of the blazer, we're going to grab the rectangle tool. We're going to go ahead and draw a rectangle from one end to the other. We're going to grab the direct selection tool and click the bottom edge of the rectangle. With the reshape tool, we're going to click and drag down just a tiny bit, give it a slight curve, and then arrange, send to back. So it is behind. And we just want to make sure now with the direct selection tool that you take this corner point and move it up here, and this corner point and move it over here. And you'll just see a little bit of it peeking through the bottom part where the jacket scallops. Now we can move on to the back. Now that we have the front of the blazer done, let's move on and do the back. Before we move on, I see a few things I could do to make this a little bit nicer looking. I'm going to go to my direct selection tool, click on this anchor point at mid-waist and arrow it over just a couple of clicks. I'm going to do the same on the other side so I stay symmetrical. And I'm going to do it on the bottom as well. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It was feeling a little tapered toward the bottom, and now I think the proportion is better. The other thing I want to do before I do the back is select everything and make sure that my strokes are round caps and round corners so that I don't have any of those nasty little spikes. Now we can select the whole thing and group it, and we'll move on to the back view. Let's make a copy and move it over. Now we can turn this into the back. We'll double-click to go into isolation mode and start by deleting the elements we don't need. Let's take the buttons and move them out of the way. And then we are going to delete the lapels because we don't need them on the back. Now what we need to do is unite the two front pieces with the collar. So we're going to drag from the top straight down, making sure not to get either of the side pieces. I'm only dragging down about this far, just far enough to get all of the top pieces and the two sides of the jacket. And we're going to go up to Pathfinder and unite them all together. So we still have our princess, and now we just have to deal with the bottom of the jacket. What we want to do is be careful down here because it's overlapping the princess seam, and if I unite this piece with this, it may cause trouble. So instead, I'm going to select the two pieces and divide. Right-click, ungroup. Looks a little strange, but now it's very easy to select these pieces right here in the center and unite them together. Let's grab all of these pieces here and unite them together. And then these pieces here that make up the princess and unite those together. Same over here. Unite those together. And now we've got this all back the way it wants to be. I also noticed that there's just a little wiggle here, which means there's probably an anchor point there, so we'll get rid of those two anchor points. And there's the hem of our blazer. Now we need to take care of the collar. And just like with the shirt, we're going to take the pen tool, draw a straight line, holding the shift key, straight across. We're going to switch to the direct selection tool to select it, and then to the reshape tool. We can go ahead and drag it up just a tiny bit so it follows a little bit of the line of the collar. It doesn't need to be quite as round as the top, but it's nice if it wraps around the back just a little bit. We want to make sure there's no fill. Switch to the black arrow, select the dividing line and the silhouette, Pathfinder divide, right-click, ungroup to separate the collar. And I'm noticing a little dot here. We can just take the delete anchor point tool. It was just an artifact from when we united before. Okay, what's left to do to the back of this jacket? Well, one of the things we'll need to do is a center back seam. So we'll take the pen tool and we'll draw a seam, center back, holding the shift key to keep it straight. We want to select that line and the center of the jacket, not the sides or the collar, and go ahead and divide, right-click, ungroup. My jacket is going to have a vent in the back. And the way we indicate a vent is with a little diagonal line of stitches. So I'm just going to draw a little diagonal line right here, the width of my vent, And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my dash line. And I'm going to change the point size. Instead of to 0.25, I'm going to make it 0.5, so it's just a little bit heavier and it can be seen easier. One last thing I'm going to do, and that's make two-piece sleeve. So let's go ahead and divide the sleeve up so that we can vent the end of the sleeve as well. With the pen tool, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that goes from here straight down the sleeve. Let's turn off the dash line that we have on. And now I need to make sure there's no fill on it, so I'll remove the fill, select the line and the sleeve, and go ahead and Pathfinder, divide, right-click, ungroup. Also, we're going to have a vent there, so we need to do the same little diagonal line of stitches. With the pen tool, we'll go ahead and draw a little diagonal line, and we can copy the stitching from here. Let's make sure there's no fill on that. And the last thing we need to do is place some buttons, which is why I saved the buttons from the front. We'll take them. I'm going to ungroup them. We need to move them much closer together this time, so let's move them right next to each other. We'll select all three, grab a line, we'll align them and distribute them so they're evenly placed. I'll group them together, move them into place. We'll put the top button where I want it. And notice it's behind the sleeve. So all I need to do is right-click, arrange, bring to front. Now I can click on rotate, click in the center of the top button, and just drag my buttons around until they're properly aligned with the seam. And rather than do all this work on the other sleeve, I'm going to delete it, take this sleeve, and reflect it to the other side. We'll close Pathfinder, exit isolation mode, go to my layers and turn off the template. We'll turn off the guidelines too. And here we have a blazer drawn in Adobe Illustrator.